The idea is that this would make U.S. servicemen and women more aware, that there would be better civilian interactions, and that they would be more capable of winning hearts and minds. And for those of you that are familiar with the human terrain systems that the U.S. Army developed in 2006 and still puts social scientists, it assigns social scientists to military units in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is how the human terrain system has been advertised as, it makes the military more aware of civilians and more capable of interacting with them. I don't actually think that that's what it does, and I don't actually think that's what it achieves, the human terrain system achieves in reality, but that's how it's been advertised. Now, the first page of the U.S. Army's new Afghanistan Smart Book has a quote from General Stanley McChrystal when he was commander of ISAF, and he said, quote, "We all must understand the people of Afghanistan, operate in a way that respects their culture and religion," end quote. So you can see that there's this idea being put out there at the highest levels that this is that it's about understanding other people and learning about them and not offending them and respecting them. The second element of culture as a tool of war is that culture can create better warriors with more success in mission effectiveness. And given that this is the goal of the military, that also seems to be incredibly relevant. And when I was at the Army Fourth Culture Summit of the TRADOC Center, Major General Hogg, who was at the time the Deputy Commanding General of Combined Security Transition Command in Afghanistan, he proposed that the U.S. military think of, quote, culture as a weapons system. The military, General Hogg asserted, needs to learn the culture of the lands where it is deployed and use that knowledge to fight its enemies, along with more conventional armaments. And this is where someone like me comes in and thinks that this use of culture seems at odds with the winning the hearts and minds and the respect others ways of talking about the military's interest in cultures. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, is it possible to really have both of these things, where culture is a weapon system and culture is also used to sort of sway people over to your side and to make their lives better? So that even if the military's new vision of culture is creating servicemen and women who have cross-cultural competence, I think a larger issue remains. The failures in Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't think, are about culture. I think instead they're about attitudes. Individual attitudes and behaviors that are allowed and even promoted by the attitudes and policies of the U.S. government and the U.S. military. As part of my research, we interviewed over 50 Iraqis about their experiences with the U.S. military in this culture realm and what they thought. And their accounts really actually surprised me, but I think it illustrates my larger point. First, most of the Iraqis complained about the ways that Americans have treated them as civilians, both in terms of danger and disrespect. Almost every single one of them have an immediate relative who was unintentionally killed, injured, or shot at by American troops while doing basic everyday life things like standing on the roofs of their homes, sitting in the garden, or driving down the street. The Iraqis found that some servicemen and women are respectful and others are not, and they cite things such as using dogs for searches, male soldiers searching or touching women, and the many incidents of thefts that occurred during house searches. But most importantly, when we asked them directly whether they thought culture was relevant to the role of the U.S. military in Iraq, most of them replied that it was not. More important to them was ending the occupation and the issue of general respect, not in cultural terms, but in terms of respect for their country and the capabilities of its people. And the issue of respect is pivotal in the experience of Iraqis with the Americans after 2003. But the soldiers, many of the soldiers and Marines know this, and one sergeant in the military police responded to our queries about the usefulness of formal cultural training by saying, quote, "I don't need training to treat people with respect." Indeed, respectful behavior may largely be a matter of personal integrity and emotional intelligence, qualities that many American soldiers no doubt have in abundance. Yet troops are agents of a policy, and the fact is that the invasion and occupation of Iraq were never based on knowledge of or respect for Iraqis or their accomplishments. Of the many blunders of the Coalition Provisional Authority in 2003 through 2004, Bremer's decision to cancel Iraqi municipal and local elections in June 2003 was a sign of this and much more to come. He said in an interview that there is, quote, "no blanket prohibition against self-rule. I'm not opposed to it," he said, "but I want to do it in a way that takes care of our concerns." Elections that are held too early can be destructive. It's got to be done very carefully, end quote. The Iraqi response to the cancellation of elections revealed that they were highly invested in the democratic processes that they had been promised, and demonstrators in Najaf demanded elections with banners that read, quote, "Canceled elections are evidence of bad intentions," and, quote, "Oh, America, where are promises of freedom, elections, and democracy," end quote. The mayor of the town of Balad said, quote, "Fine, we embrace the Americans. We want to see security, but we want them to move aside and let us have our own voices. We have waited a long time for this, and we are growing tired of waiting, okay?" He further added that, quote, "But the American soldiers must understand that security comes also from giving the people their own leaders, their own powers. That will calm things down, I think," end quote. Instead of respect for Iraqis and Iraq, and for listening to the words of Iraqis themselves, U.S. policies have seen Iraqis as subjects to be liberated and later, what Timothy Mitchell might call, objects of development. This attitude necessitated that Iraqis accept what was given to them and complain, if they had to, only in the prescribed forums. From the official U.S. point of view, respect was neither desired nor necessary. Judging by the proposed content of the fresh "What is Culture" material that is being produced in the U.S. military, servicemen and women are to develop attitudes towards others that are built on flexibility, acceptance, and lack of judgment. It is ironic that this most anthropological of understandings about how to approach culture is becoming part of the military's plan to make culture a weapon system and culture as a tool of war. It remains to be seen, however, if such attitudinal change can take root among the troops. U.S. attitudes towards the outside world have long been infused with a sense of American exceptionalism and superiority, a sense that has been heightened by the grievances of the September 11th attacks. It seems, I would conclude, that the proposed shift in U.S. troops' attitudes towards cultures and the people they work with on the ground may end up being the gentler face of violent imperial policies that envision invasions and occupations as justified, sustainable, and ethical. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rochelle, for that amazing overview. Clearly, the cultural training industry is a growing industry, and let's just hope that with time they'll start honing and vetting the information in the smart cards and the smart books so it gets better and better. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'll open the floor to questions. For those of you in the overflow rooms, we have question cards that you can fill out. And I think for the sake of time, we'll do 2 or 3 questions at a time. So if people could please state their names and their affiliations, ask your question, and we'll move the mic on to the next person. Maybe you need a pen and a piece of paper. Okay. All right. Any questions?
Oda Aberdeen. Historically speaking, if you look, if we go back to Algiers, the French were.
I think you're not talking about.
Hello?
Yes, there you go. Close your mouth.
I said if we go back to Algiers when the French went in 1832, there was resistance. The British in 1920 in Iraq, there was resistance. The Chechens are resisting the Soviets. The Afghanis resisted the Soviets. So no matter what you do to acclimate your soldiers to culture, the mere fact that occupation clashes with the culture, it clashes with nationalism. And what are the lessons that you have learned from your research?
I get.
One more question.
Oh, sorry.
Just for the sake of